And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV radio and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace. We are brought to you by our good friends over at Jace Medical. They came on board during COVID because they saw certain venerable award-winning medications are now suddenly labeled dangerous, unusable. Horse pace, conspiracy theories, drugs they were just giving Nobel Prizes to just a few years prior. And they got concerned about that. They wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to make sure that just in case, that could never happen here, next time maybe it's venerable antibiotics like doxycycline or amoxicillin that suddenly you can't have access to right when you might need them the most. They came up with the Jace case. It gives you an opportunity to back up with the best antibiotics that we've discovered so far as a species, but now you can also expand that Jace case as well and make it customizable for medications that you need backups with, including practical things like EpiPens. And yes, ivermectin is something that you can customize and put in your Jace case as well. Get a discount on your order with the code DACE right now when you go to jace.com, J-A-S-E, jacemedical.com. Jacemedical.com is where you want to go. Use my last name, Dace, as your discount code at jacemedical.com. All right, coming up on today's show, we'll hear from the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, coming up a little bit later on. We'll play buy, seller, hold. We'll get through as many of your buy, seller, hold submissions as we can, and then whatever remains, we will address in the overtime today at blazetv.com/Dace. At the bottom of this hour, I want to give you guys a chance to hear the address that I gave to the Leadership Summit on Friday. And I chose to honor the man that we've kind of dubbed the first half of the year 2024 Man of the Year. All-world kicker Harrison Butker of the Kansas City Chiefs, and how he has set an example, I think, for the men of this era to emulate and follow. And we'll let you hear that address coming up at the bottom of the hour. And I really want you to listen to the ovation that Harrison receives at the end of that talk. I mean, it was the loudest ovation I heard the entire summit, and they let their voices be heard, and he's deserving of every single decibel of it. So that's coming up here at the bottom of the hour. But before we get to all of that, let's begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Night 2 of the Republican National Convention, which featured speakers, among others, like Ron DeSantis.
Let's be honest here. Biden is just a figurehead. He's a tool for imposing a leftist agenda on the American people. They support open borders, allowing millions and millions of illegal aliens to pour into our country and to burden our communities, but just don't send any to Martha's Vineyard, then they get really upset. America cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency.
Ann Fundner, a mother who sadly lost her child to a fentanyl overdose, delivered these powerful remarks.
Like most teenagers, Weston wanted to fit in. And in a moment of peer pressure, he tried something that someone gave to him, and it took my baby's life. We did everything right. I had those conversations with him, and fentanyl still found my son. And on February 27th, 2022, our lives were shattered and our baby was gone. This was not an overdose, it was a poisoning. His whole future, everything we ever wanted for him was ripped away in an instant. And Joe Biden does nothing. I hold Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the borders are. What a joke. And Gavin Newsom and every Democrat who supports open borders responsible for the death of my son.
In other news, Senator Bob Menendez was found guilty on all counts Tuesday in his federal corruption trial. Federal prosecutors in New York alleged the New Jersey Democrat accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes in the form of cash, gold bars, mortgage payments, and more in exchange for the senator's political clout. John Deere is the latest corporation to bow the knee to activist and independent journalist Robbie Starbuck's anti-woke crusade, weeks after Tractor Supply nuked its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives following conservative backlash and boycott sparked by the commentator and filmmaker Robbie Starbuck. Deere & Company announced on X this week they're no longer participating in cultural awareness parades and are pulling back on woke workplace policies. Microsoft has laid off an entire diversity, equity, and inclusion team. That's according to internal emails from that team's leader and reported by Business Insider. The emails say Microsoft terminated the woke brown shirts effective July 1st, citing changing business needs. That's Microsoft doing that. Elon Musk announced yesterday he's moving SpaceX and X's headquarters out of California in reaction to Governor Gavin Newsom signing a new bill that bans school districts from enacting policies which force teachers to inform parents when their own children are asked to be referred to as a sex other than what they were born as. Musk said in a post on X that this was the final straw and he's moving SpaceX's headquarters to Starbase, Texas, and X's headquarters from San Fran to Austin. And now going back a bit to JD Vance, the vice presidential candidate on the Republican ticket. Leftoids have already attempted to unleash Oppo research against Vance, and surprise, surprise, it makes Vance come off as pretty based.
I tend to think that we should seize the institutions of the left and turn them against the left, right? We need like a de-Bathification program, but like a de-wokeification program in the United States, right? So like, let me give you a couple examples. So one of the things I've always been very sympathetic to is this idea that we don't have a real constitutional republic anymore. What we have is an administrative state, right? The administrative state controls everything, right? So to the point that like when Donald Trump wins, he can't even sometimes get his people in core positions of authority in the administrative state. It's like, well, do we have a constitutional republic? The founding fathers actually created a very powerful chief executive, a very powerful president. But if he can't even fire the people in his own administration, like, is this really a successful republic? So a lot of conservatives have said we should deconstruct the administrative state. We should basically eliminate the administrative state. And I'm sympathetic to that project. But another option is that we should just seize the administrative state for our own purposes. We should fire all of the people.
On foreign policy,
one of the attitudes that I think is very, very dominant at the Munich Security Conference is the idea of the American superpower that can do everything all at once. And what I'm telling you is that we live in a world of scarcity in weapons manufacturing and America's capacity to make the critical machinery of war. And that world of scarcity is what I'm trying to get us all to wake up to. In that world of scarcity, we can't support Ukraine and the Middle East and contingencies in East Asia. It just doesn't make any sense. The math doesn't work out in terms of weapons manufacturing.
On who's actually running the show at pretty much every level of politics.
What I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
I'd like to add one thing as well before you consider any of that. Who would you rather share a foxhole with? The permanently furrowed brow of Mike Pence, or somebody like JD Vance, who grew up in the squalid and decrepit Rust Belt to work his way up and overcome all of that adversity into becoming potentially second in line to the presidency? Probably JD Vance. Also, it's Wednesday. We still don't know really anything about the Trump assassin. Anyway, finally, you're never going to be prepared for the final 4 seconds of Jim Justice. He's the Rhino governor turned Senate candidate in West Virginia. You're never going to be prepared for the last 4 seconds of this clip from the Republican National Convention.
Bottom line to every single thing that's going on in this great country today is one thing. We become totally unhinged if Donald Trump is not elected in November.
If you're listening on the podcast, sorry. And that's what happened while we were away.
Gosh. Thanks. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Birch Gold. I don't know, feels kind of unhinged right now, but I'm with you. I mean, I don't agree with Jim Justice on much. He's one of the greatest poison pimps of the COVID era. But
that's being kind.
Yeah, that's maybe the kindest analysis we could make. Anyway, things are already pretty unhinged. That's why you want to get a hold of our friends over at Birch Gold, because when you see things like the U.S. now spends more money on interest on the debt than on national defense or Medicare, is that good? I don't think it is. Let's at least admit it's not it's suboptimal. It's at least suboptimal. Fair? It's at least that. Okay? We're off course here. Vaccine pimps may say we might even be unhinged. So for over 20 years, Birch Gold has helped thousands of Americans protect their savings by converting an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. To learn more, you can text Steve to 989-898. That's text Steve to 989-898 and claim your free, no obligation info kit on gold. Text Steve to 989-898. All right. To the montage that Aaron just presented, we go. I want to begin with JD Vance for just let's start there, because I will. What I find fascinating is watching on social media. We were just remarking about this alarming rise we are all seeing in the feed the algorithm gives us on X of anti-Semitism from the right. Mm-hmm. You know what? What I would urge everybody to do, if you're concerned about that too. Go on your feed and see which people claiming to be quote unquote America first are highly complimentary of Vance and which ones are not. He's kind of, I've noticed, become like a dog whistle for who's just, they're not America first, they're just anti-Semites. You see what I'm saying? Because he's also been very staunchly pro-Israel. Now, he doesn't think we've got empty, an endless pocketbook to give money to Israel, and neither do I. All right, and I'm a staunch Zionist, but we don't have endless money to give to Israel or anybody else. We're broke. I just did a live read that showed we're spending more money on the interest of our own debt than we are on Medicare and Department of Defense for our own people. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. All right, but you can kind of see that where is the dividing line of I'm questioning policy that we're doing with Israel because we can't afford it, and are we helping to further destabilize the world? And we can disagree and agree within that realm, but those are legit questions that a superpower ought to be constantly having, right? Okay. Or who just is kind of just, well, really, I just hate Jews, and this is that was kind of my camouflage, just asking questions. Maybe Joseph Mengele was misunderstood. Okay, he's kind of the barometer I've noticed from what I've seen so far on whether you're really seriously America first and represent a new generation and think we ought to reassess what it means to be a superpower and how many of things do we really have to be involved in? Okay,
yeah, I see it.
Or I just hate the Jews. I just don't like the Jews, right? Okay, so that's one little side note there. But what I find fascinating is, I'm going to just tell you straight up, Aaron, that's one of the best montages from a Republican politician I have ever seen, that we've ever aired on this show. The 3 clips that you just played back to back to back. Off the top of your head.
I know.
Can you guys come up with 5 montages that we've ever aired on this program that are better than the 3 clips that Aaron just played right there?
To be fair, low bar, but
yes. Thank you for Mr.
Correct.
Vinegar needs to make sure that we set the standard. I understand that. Okay. Yes.
But you're right.
And this doesn't take away, and I'm not trying to block anything here. I mean, we were critical of him coming out and basically saying, hey, the abortion pill, we need to protect that. We were critical of that, still deserves that criticism.
I actually think that criticism is even more valid based on what we just saw.
I know.
Because this
that
guy
doesn't square with the rest of
because
that.
This dude, you can't BS your way through things like that. You know what I'm saying? This isn't God bless him, but because I remember being on that debate for Cruz. This isn't Donald Trump dropping anchor babies because one of his people fed that term to him. Probably Stephen Miller or Steve Bannon fed that term to him, and he dropped it to sound, well, we now know it as based, but right wing. And then when they started asking him pushback questions, he couldn't defend his statement, and so he turned to Rand Paul and said, and Rand Paul's not even supposed to be here tonight. He didn't even qualify. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You cannot BS your way through the level and depth of conversation. You know what that sounds like? That sounds like a guy who's friendly with our buddies at the Claremont Institute, and that's why the Claremont Institute, because they talk like this. That's Dave Reboy and all those people that we've had on the show. He sounds like them, and they're all buds. This guy is seriously thinking through processes and issues at a rate that we just don't typically see from really many elected politicians on the right, except, frankly, the ones I tend to support in primaries. Okay? Your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's authentic. And at least in disagreement, even if there's authenticity, you can respect that. And you can respect that, disagree passionately, while respecting that. To your point, 2 days ago, yesterday at the overall, the convention was much better, but 2 days ago, I mean, honestly, set aside Amber Rose and the prayer that's driving people nuts, the whole thing was terrible. For a first day coming out of what happened, and I know a lot of it was prepared, it was like, it was so inauthentic, and the speeches from the politicians were exactly who we need to move beyond. And that right there, that level of authenticity that you just saw is what I'm talking about. And I'm hoping, again, after this assassination, comprehensively, it's a reasonable hope to say that we will become more of that overall on every level. We will stop with the stale talking points and the juvenile connecting of the dots, and we will actually be men in the arena.
I will tell you, the point that he made there about deconstructing the administrative state or turning it against our opposition. When was that clip, Aaron? From like 21, I want to say?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. By then, my transition of my thinking on these kinds of questions was well underway based on what we had we were living through under COVID. Okay. But if you would have gone and listened to the show as recently as, say, 2018, 2019, I would have bristled at that.
Yes.
I would have thought, I had not yet accepted we were in negative world, as I talked about for an hour yesterday. I did not accept that yet. I thought that I didn't think we were in positive world, don't get me wrong. We've been revival or bust has been the credo of our show from almost the day that it started, but I thought we were still in neutral world. And I don't think you should be eager to accept that it is a negative world, by the way. When I say eager, like, don't admit it, don't project it's a negative world flippantly. Don't do that cavalierly, okay? Because you have to understand what that means. Like like I told you guys about the conference of Christian leaders I went to last May, we're all talking about revival, and the oldest guy in the room gets up at the very end like a Ben Franklin moment and says, do you all understand what it is you're really asking for? Because we need revival, but we're way too comfortable. So if you want the Lord to send revival, there's going to have to be a lot more suffering to set the stage for it. And the room got real quiet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Similarly, don't it's a negative world. That's not a talking point. Don't do that to look based on X. You have to, it doesn't mean, now yesterday I spent an hour telling you not to ignore that it is, okay? But I'm also telling you, don't treat it like it's a talking point. Understand the ramifications of what it means if it's a negative world, okay? If it's a negative world, then the rules of engagement, to borrow the phrase from our Special Forces Green Beret we had on the overtime about the Trump almost assassination on Monday, the rules of engagement dramatically switch in a negative world. All right, it's a dramatic thing from saying to Polycarp, you know what, man, I think you're a bunch of cannibals eating his flesh, drinking his blood, and polytheist with the three gods, and I don't understand any of this, and you're kooks, and you think your God's alive, and we killed him ourselves. But if you want to do that on your own out there in the middle of nowhere and, some province of Rome, that's a you thing. To Mr. Polycarp, we need you to kindly come out and bow to Caesar as God. You see what I'm saying? That's a way. Negative world is not a talking point, which is why I was very hesitant for several years to flip that switch. Not because I didn't understand what it meant, but because I do understand what it means. Negative world means everything becomes zero sum, guys. That's what it means. That means that if it's a negative world, the rules of engagement change, and we have to accept this. Otherwise, and I've used this analogy in the past, you're not a colonial, you're a redcoat. You're enjoying your cup of tea. We break from shooting at 10, okay, for tea and biscuits. We break from shooting again out here in this very gentlemanly field around 12:30 for lunch, right? We take a latrine break, and then in the afternoon, cool. As dusk settles over the hills, the shooting again begins until dinner time, and then we'll see you again in the morning. And the colonials were like, no, we're gonna hide in the trees and just like shoot you guys in the back. I try to win. See what I'm saying? Because that's a zero-sum game. Once you declare a Declaration of Independence, you're not Englishmen anymore, you're Americans. So this landmass is going to be ruled by England or Americans. Zero-sum game, right? Mm-hmm. All right? That's what negative world means. Zero-sum game. Steel cage match, two worldviews enter, only one walks out. So do not eagerly use this flippantly and I was concerned for a few years that frankly our side was doing that. And then it became very apparent to me that I could no longer deny what was in front of me, especially beginning March 16th of 2020. So to me, the rules of engagement have now changed. We're in a negative world, which means we're in a zero-sum game. Zero sum. I mean, look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's pivot to try to win his party back during a civil war. Did you see his pivot yesterday? We're just going to take the judicial branch and just desecrate it. That's my pander to my base to get him back on my side. What does that tell you about who his base is?
Everything.
When Bill Clinton thought he had to win his base back, he signed balanced budget amendments and defensive marriage acts and the crime bill that every Democrat, including Joe Biden, signed on to at the time. Now I have to get to the left of Ocasio-Cortez to win my base back. We cannot share a country with that.
Exactly.
It can't happen. I'm sorry. I hate it. All right. I've got a gorgeous granddaughter. My beautiful oldest daughter just took on a walk this morning. I've got a son-in-law we all adore, who's off to a month of drill right now. He's enlisted. He's active military. I've got a son I'm about to graduate and send off into the world and hopefully make his way. I've got a daughter that graduated. We sent off into the world to make her way. I'm not happy to say this, but it is what it is. Which is why, no, I have no problem at all with what Libs of TikTok is doing.
Exactly.
Even down to the Home Depot worker.
Yes.
Because of this crap that it's fine to just shoot people we don't like and joke about it. If this has permeated this level of the water table, hell no, you can't share that. That's the same woman that when you walk into Home Depot, my sump pump broke, my whole home is flooded, okay, and you walk in with the wrong hat or the wrong shirt, we don't serve your kind here. We can't live like that, guys. We can't. So on one hand, don't eagerly jump to negative world and hit that switch. Understand what it means when it is a negative world, that it is zero sum now. On the other hand, don't deny that either. Otherwise, you'll be the zero summed out. I don't have a problem with anything she's doing in naming teachers, any of them. Hell yeah, there needs to be a purge. Cancel culture is when we take people and cancel them for wanting to be free. Freedom is when we get rid of the people that won't let us be free. Totally different thing. So I guess we got to debate what the definition of freedom is then, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And you know what? I like my definition a hell of a lot better than theirs. You? Anybody else in the sound of my voice, what do you think about that? You like their definition or ours? I like ours. I'd much rather be arguing about whether or not to give Amber Rose a place in the spotlight wearing my jersey over whether I'm allowed a place in the spotlight at all. Or maybe the spotlight's a prison yard. Maybe that's the spotlight. And that's where we are. Zero-sum game. Aaron.
You are articulating why my assessment of this election has changed from where it was just 7 days ago. I was ambivalent 7 days ago, open but ambivalent to voting for Donald Trump in this election. What changed? Bullets started flying.
Yep.
And so I looked over there and I said, "Aw, crap, that's the last chopper out of Nam." That's the assessment that I made.
Yeah.
Okay? That chopper might not be a Chinook. It might be a 40-year-old autogyro that's maybe on its last legs. It might not be able to support my weight. But it's a chopper. I feel like I don't have a choice. That's the assessment that has changed.
Amen. That's where we are. We have to accept this. And if we wait too long to accept it, then we'll put ourselves in a position where the only thing that will allow us to defend ourselves from it is to exchange fire back. All right? So this is not a time for 5-year plans. Well, maybe if I don't vote, I'll get DeSantis in there. There's really good reasons, moral reasons to not vote for Donald Trump, but he's given you plenty of them. Choose one of those. That's not one of them. That's a dumb reason. There's no plans. Here, the Democrats plan to reunite their base and win the election. Just crap all over one of the 3 branches of government out in the open. Just completely desecrate it, smash the stained glass window. That was their plan. And you want to talk about who's in position for where in 2028? Wake up, man. Wake up. See things as they really are, not as you want them to be. Which brings me to...
May I on that quickly?
Very quickly. Go ahead, because there's one more thing I want to add.
Remember your Gandalf. Up to Frodo. These are the times you live in. Do with them what you can.
Well said.
Folks, and there's really smart people doing this, but we're fighting orcs. And I just tweeted about this earlier before you came in, Steve, but if we really think now's the time to set an example by not doing to that... Do we even know anything about this assassination attempt in full yet? Not even at all. They're trying to cover it up. And you really want to go the decorum route? Squeeze. Squeeze hard. And this is my point about comfort. And this whole damn industry that we work in, and yes, it pays me, but all of us talk, and never do. This is why people come at me and, he had the cops come at. You're damn right they have, because I've done. We've got to just stop thinking the orcs are going to leave us alone. They just tried to kill the man.
In the minds of the Home Depot girl, Trump is a proxy for you. For you. That's a freaking employee at the hardware store saying, I wish they would have shot more people that didn't disagree with me. That's what she's thinking. And that's what all these damn teachers that Libs of TikTok is exposing as well. He's the proxy for you. Again, not the proxy I would have chose. I tried to get us to choose another proxy. But your enemies will choose your proxies for you when they start shooting at you, as Aaron just pointed out. This is them saying, why do they hate him? They all loved him 12 years ago. What changed? He came down an escalator and said, I'll represent the deplorables. That's what changed. He was arguably the most popular celebrity on the planet in 2011. What changed? Who he's aligned with. So when they say, I wish the shooter wouldn't have missed, they're really saying, hey, because he represents you, fill in the blank, you know the rest. And so if that's where we are, then here's where I am. I like civil wars better when my side wins them and not yours. Thank you. And to that end, it is day 5. Day 5. And the guy who looks like that he might have been captain of the math club, we know nothing about him. We don't know how he did it. He somehow created an unlockable phone for Quantico, for all of Quantico, somehow defied an entire Secret Service detail, has no traceable social media in an era where we can find everybody's search histories the minute they do something we don't like. Nothing? Nothing. No motive, no full explanation of how he did it. Nothing. It's been day 5. You know, some of the things we've talked about, chaos. Imagine that there's not problems in the streets. You know what? You still have chaos. The presumptive Republican nominee has been killed before there's a Republican nominee. He has no running mate. You throw the other party into an open convention at the same time. The other party's in dissension. You see what I'm saying? Nothing. Day 5. Mike Johnson today, well, I'm going to appoint a task force. Don't let it be the task force you appointed to look into the origin of the virus or any of the other damn task forces. There needs to be answers here. Someone needs to stand up. 435 people in Congress. One of them needs to say, we need answers here. No more games. Answers. How is this freaking possible? And until you explain to us otherwise, we're going to operate under the assumption that the same government that has attempted to take the likely Republican nominee and put him in prison for 9 months just allowed this to happen. Prove differently. Prove differently then. Prove differently. There needs to be answers to this. Defining answers to this. And it's day 5. Nothing? Nothing. Day 5.
Newt Gingrich yesterday was pointing out no one has ever gotten fired for anything for how long now? Are we going to let it happen again? He was absolutely right.
This is why what JD is saying, we can't just deconstruct the administrative state. All the regs and policies and everything there would remain. You need to seize that power and turn it back to your side so you can undo the damage they did. Then you can talk about deconstructing it. But not until you seize that power and wield it to undo the power that they've used it for a generation. right, so in this era we're in of chaos and cowardice, when we have an opportunity to point people to the light and to lift up and praise those setting the example for the rest of us, we should take full advantage of it. And at this week's Family Leadership Summit on Friday, I did that with my first half Man of the Year for 2024, Harrison Butker. Watch this and pay attention to the ovation at the end. Good to see you all again. How are you? Want to thank our friends over at Patriot Mobile for being one of the partners to make this event possible. If you guys listen to my show, you know that they are big supporters of what I do as well. And I cannot think of a conference I have been to on our side in the last few years where Patriot Mobile has not been one of the partners and one of the sponsors. We were just down in Tennessee about a month ago for an event for Christian filmmakers, and Nefarious was being featured, and Patriot Mobile, we were sitting in the Patriot Mobile Hall. So when you hear me say on my show that Patriot Mobile really does reinvest the money you give to them back into the kingdom, well, now you know it's living proof. So we want to thank them for making this possible here today. I also want to start for a minute, if I could. I want to thank the mama bears in our audience. Okay, I know Moms for Liberty is here this weekend in town, for example. There they are back there being very subtle. Okay. And we have, I don't know where we'd be after the last few years without our mama bears. Their willingness to confront, their willingness to push back has been vital in getting any semblance of our lives that we have been able to get back here over the last few years. I'm very blessed myself. I'm married to a mama bear. My wife went to school. She's got more degrees now than Celsius. And she is she's a therapist here, a Christian therapist here in town. She's on the front lines of the culture war, trying to help put broken people back together again. So our mama bears are very vital in the war that's happening in our culture. But if we could for a second, I would like to speak directly to the men, if I could. Because what we need right now in our culture more than anything else are godly men. Men who understand the signs of the times and what to do about them. So there's both discernment and then there is action. What we are lacking right now in our culture are men. And if you look throughout history, when you see a culture that is under some form of demonic attack, spiritual malevolence, the men are always emasculated. In the ancient world, they were literally castrated. You'd be emasculated literally. In the more modern world, we castrate them figuratively, metaphorically. Well, I don't want to speak up. Well, I don't want to rock the boat. Well, my wife's going to give me that look again. I get emails every day from men. Well, I'd speak up more. I'd push back more. But, I worry about what it's going to do to my marriage. It's funny how the other side isn't worried about that kind of stuff. You ever notice that? Like, you ever noticed at Thanksgiving, Aunt Petunia is never shy? You ever notice this? Aunt Petunia is always happy to let you know everything she saw in the lower third from MSNBC over the last 9 months. She's always willing to give you that download right before dinner, of course, every single time. And there's that uncomfortable silence where no one pushes back because you don't want to rock the boat. Meanwhile, Aunt Petunia is crapping all over the boat right there. And no one says a word. Don't want to dare offend old Aunt Petunia, who no one can stand anyway. And that's apparently loving your neighbor as you love yourself or something. It's not. It's cowardice. And it is time to put the idol of cowardice aside for the men in this room and the men with our belief system all over the country. You can tell the condition of a culture by the condition of its men every single time. You guys have all heard the stats. If mom takes the kids to church and dad does not, the odds that they will go when they are adults, very low. If dad takes the kids to church, regardless of what mom does, the odds they will keep going when they are adults, much higher. Why? Moms don't matter? No. It's a question of authority, jurisdiction. The dad is the head of the home. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that he's the ultimate authority. It means that he recognizes that God is the authority, but he is the first one responsible to God for what happens in that home. And that when things go bad, if they go bad in that home, God is coming to you first as the steward of that home, the one he has given dominion to, like Adam. And we saw how Adam failed with it. So you might have noticed I'm not wearing the normal attire to speak at a conference like this. Maybe you picked up on that. It's because I wanted to spend a few minutes here. I wanted to honor someone that I think so far in 2024 is the man of the year. And that's Harrison Butker, the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. And what you saw in Harrison Butker are three things, men, that we need to emulate and model. Number one, he has a platform because of his excellence. He has a platform because of his excellence. A dear old friend of mine who used to run the Iowa-Nebraska NAACP and is a retired minister now here in town, once told me that when he was growing up, he could never figure out why if he went to go pick up a white girl and say, hey, I'm here to pick up your daughter for prom, her dad was like, no, you're not. But yet his son back in his bedroom could have a picture of Dr. J, full fro, hanging on his wall, and his dad was totally fine with that. What was the disconnect? And he realized, you know what? Oh, Dr. J's not black to him. He's just a great basketball player. He's excellent. And his excellence transcended the differences that he otherwise would have had with Julius Erving. Harrison Butker is the best field goal kicker on planet Earth alive right now. He's excellent. He doesn't mail it in. When he goes to work, well, just punching a clock. What's the point of what I'm doing here, what I'm being here? And you might be saying, well, that's easy for him to say, Steve. He's got a famous job. Also comes with a lot more pressure than probably yours. He screws up, particularly on the first Sunday in February. Only 500 million people are going to know about it right then and there. He's excellent. We need to be excellent at what we do. When we are given a talent, we are given a skill, a gift, maximize it to its fullest potential for the glory of God. Amen? Because that excellence will let you transcend the differences the culture has with you. Because we are in a negative world now, folks, for the first time ever in the history of American Christianity. You are no longer the default system. You are no longer the benefit of the doubt. You are no longer the jury. You're on the witness stand now. We're in a negative world, which is really what Christendom was like until the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. Christians of some various stripe were always in a negative world until this country was founded. And if you were a black Christian, you were in a negative world until about 50 years ago in this country. Now, this is going to be new to a lot of the people in this room, but it is not new to Christianity to be in a negative world. And one of the ways that you transcend that negativity is to be excellent at what you do. Men, take pride in the gifts and skills you have. Soli Deo Gloria, and do them for the glory of God. That'll give you a platform. People will be interested or at least tolerate what you have to say because you provide a service for them that they can't get anywhere else. I can promise you that if Harrison Butker had missed a kick that would have won the Super Bowl last year, they'd have cut him over his comments this year. But they can't afford to because there's nobody better. Be that guy. There's nobody better. I can't sit here and tell you years later that everyone in the management at WHO loved the show that I used to do. They didn't. Okay? I remember once I got called into a meeting, they were going to fire me for actually supporting Bob Vander Plaats for governor. True story. Okay? And when senior management called me in to fire me, they brought Van Harden in, the program director, and they asked him, he's out there campaigning for this guy, giving his opinions on the air. What are we doing here? And I'll never, ever forget what Van Harden said back to the senior management. He looked at our senior management. He said, here's what we're doing here. There's no one we could hire that's better than this guy from 4 to 7 p.m. That's what we're doing here. And as soon as he said that, it got quiet as kept in the room right after that. And it went away. Be excellent at what you do, number one. Number two, when you are excellent, you now have a platform, which means you have a voice. I get asked all the time, Steve, what can I do? There's some people in this room that can stroke a big check. Most of you can't. There's some people in this room that are called to run for office. Most of you won't be. But all of us have a voice. It is time to no longer let Aunt Petunia get away with hijacking Thanksgiving again. Stop it. Speak up. I go back again to my old boss, Van Harden. When we used to do strategy meetings at WHO, before he walked in, the language was blue with the sales staff and the programming staff. It sounded like the locker room. But the minute Van Harden walked in, people sat up straight. He commanded their respect, and they cleaned up their language real quick. It wasn't too long ago, there might be things that you wouldn't dare say at Grandma's house because Nana will make you hurt. She might be a $1.05 and in a cane, but she will turn that cane around and she will whip your backside with that if you talk like that at her house. You bring that foolishness to her home, you will hurt. It needs to hurt to be foolish in our culture again. There needs to be some form of law of the jungle, pain reinforcement. I see the young kids nowadays, the stuff they say to each other over text. You would have needed an orthodontist 7 times when I was a kid if you'd have said that stuff to people. And there was a certain mutual assured destruction factor that stopped you from being that foolish. We need to make mutually assured destruction great again, if you ask me. We need to make pushback great again, if you ask me. Because I can promise you there's a lot of people also sitting at that Thanksgiving table that are tired of hearing it from Aunt Petunia as well. So it's up to us as the men, lead. Take responsibility and say, yeah, we're not doing that this year. Or if you want, I'm your Huckleberry. You sure you want to have this conversation? Let's go all the way. If not, let's say grace. Learn to push back. Learn to speak up. You have a voice. He has used his voice, kind of the reverse Colin Kaepernick. And all of the right people have their panties in a bunch as a result. You want to be that person. You want to be the person that, like my old boss, Van Harden, when he walks into a room, respect is commandeered instantly. Or men, you want to be the kind of person that people are like, I'm not saying that with that dude here. He'll pull my pants down. He'll make me look bad. Yep, absolutely. But here's the third thing and the third missing ingredient. Character. You know, they went to Harrison Butker's teammates, some of the best players in the world. Mr. Taylor Swift went to him. They asked him what he thought. And you could just see the gears grinding in Travis Kelce's mind, by the way, all right? Yeah, I've seen this many times with politicians when somebody asks me the question they don't want to hear. And the gears start grinding like, if I say this, this happens. And you can just tell he's saying, all right, does Taylor return my text tonight if I answer what I really think here? So what can I come up with, right? And so he came up with this answer. He said, well, I'm not sure I agree with everything Harrison said, but I'll tell you, he's been my teammate for many years. He's one of the finest men that I know. They went to maybe the greatest active athlete in America, Pat Mahomes. Asked him the same question. He said, you know, again, I'm not really sure that I jive with everything that he was talking about, but I'll tell you right now, Harrison Butker is a good man, and there's nobody else I'd want more in that pressure moment or in that fight. I think there was a wise man that said something once about having such great character that the pagans can't curse you for when you speak up and stand up for what you believe. Was there something about that in a beatitude or something somewhere, a sermon that happened in a high place once where I think that got brought up maybe? I'll tell you this, there's a lot of people in my business that do not like me. And for most of the time, I'm proud of that. However, the one thing you will not find anywhere, because believe me, you would have heard about it by now. The buttons that I push, the boundaries that I push, the people I push back on, if they could have done this, they would have told you. You will find nobody in this business who will say, Steve Deace ripped me off. Steve Deace didn't follow through on something he said he was going to do. Steve Deace lied about me. Steve Deace did this wrong. Steve Deace mistreated his wife, mistreated his kids. You won't hear that. And that means when you come at me, it's only going to be about, you're going to have to wrestle with my worldview, what I believe and who I believe in. Nothing that I've done to mess that up or give you an excuse or a false objection to push back on. For a lot of you men, frankly, the reason you don't stand up is because you're worried about that. And if that's the reason why, you need to go to your Lord, you need to confess that, you need to repent of that, and let him take that burden away from you and then step up and stand up in the leadership role that he gave you, because he did not save you to hold on to the burden of your mistakes and sins forever. He wants to take those from you and then turn you around and use you as an example to other people to then hopefully also turn to him. So be excellent at what you do, men. Have courage and stand up for what you believe in. Be a voice. Everyone has a voice. You can be a voice. Stop being silent. It's viewed as compliance. But thirdly, make sure we have the character so that when they push back, and in a negative world, I can promise you they will, there's nothing to push back on other than what you believe and nothing that you did to disqualify your own testimony. So as we close this out, you gave him a little bit of applause here at the beginning, but I don't know if you guys saw last night on the ESPYs, while Harrison Butker was sitting in the stands there, the Williams sisters took a cheap shot at him, and a bunch of people applauded. Did you guys hear about this? Probably not, because it was on the ESPYs, okay? But you know what? Here's what I'd like to do to close this out. I would like us to give the absolute loudest, most obnoxious, well done, good and faithful servant, standing ovation to Harrison Butker we possibly can on the way out of here, so they hear this thing all the way in Kansas City, Missouri. Can we do that? Let's do that right now. Well done, good and faithful servant. Amen. Thank you. Gentlemen, you want to add any of that here in the final minute we have this hour?
Well, as you know, I mentioned multiple times during that the particular phrases you chose were excellent. And when you introduce people to the notion of a negative world, I mean, you hit on a mantra, a way of explaining it. Can you repeat what you said about it being we're witnesses?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not the judge.
We used to be in the jury box. We got to decide which way the culture went. We're on the witness stand now.
Understand that and understand
we're being cross-examined constantly.
Deeply. Again, I will always use, it's not beating, I'm going to beat the horse. You got to get uncomfortable. It's not on cruise control anymore. You have got to preach to a place that lights people on fire for preaching the gospel. If you're a Christian, it's not a choice. It's what you must reconcile within your soul. And a lot of you have trouble in that. I understand it. But like Gandalf said, these are the times we live in.
Buy, sell, or hold is next. Stay tuned. All right, we are back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV radio podcast and on X as well. So hello to all of you. We debuted that this week. And the good news is, by the time we're done figuring it out, when they put all the rest of the Blaze shows on X Live, they're all going to be seamless and perfect because we got to be the guinea pigs and figure out what works and what does not. All right. But everybody here at the Blaze and Aaron have done yeoman's work, adding that additional live platform. So hopefully you're enjoying that. We would enjoy it if you would let us know what you think about what we think. You can do that via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. And this is where you could really help us. We are launching a brand new, we just scratched 51,000 YouTube subscribers, which is going to sound like a lot, but for a platform of this magnitude is not. I mean, we were just getting beyond throttled for years by YouTube, the second largest search engine on the planet, because of the work we have done questioning certain narratives. You know what I'm talking about. So we just got tired of trying to reason with them. So we're just starting an entirely new YouTube channel, starting from scratch. All right. Hitting the Control-Alt-Delete button. We're going to see if that works. So please subscribe to our new channel. Share that with as many people as you possibly can. Our new YouTube channel is Deace Show, just the last name. Deace Show. Okay, that's just it. The last name is and show. That's it. And if you guys could make sure you subscribe on YouTube and help us to build that back up, we would greatly appreciate it. That's our brand new channel on YouTube, Deace Show. If you are a podcast listener, we appreciate you guys as well. You're a big part of our audience. We'd also love it if you would show your appreciation for us. If you left us a 5-star review, we thank all of you who have done that for us. And then hit subscribe, or if you tune in via iTunes, follow. That way, every time we do a new episode, it will show up in your feed every single time. We thank all of you who do that for us, too. And then if you're a pro-lifer and you're not happy that the RNC took the pro-life planks out of the party platform, here's a good investment of your money. This was probably a better investment of your money anyway, because these people actually get results, unlike most Republicans. All right? Preborn has been on the ground waging literal soul-to-soul combat against the spirit of the age for both the babies and their mamas for many, many years. We are proud to support them here on The Blaze. That support has helped Preborn come up with the funding to save tens of thousands of babies. We want to save even more. They do it by practicing truth and grace. They confront moms that are considering the murder of their children with the truth that they're carrying a live person with a heartbeat inside of them. And it's not some unviable blob or tissue mass. It's a person. And then when the mom is confronted and bends the knee to that truth, they then are there to offer her grace. And that can be support through prenatal counseling, anything she needs to prepare to have her baby, postnatal counseling, car seat help, very practical things. All of this, by the way, free of charge. All they need is tax-deductible funding from people like us. So if you want to enlist in a worthy pro-life cause, go to preborn.com/Steve. Dial pound 250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone. You can do it that way too. Or just go to preborn.com/Steve. Make a tax-deductible donation today at preborn.com/Steve. And with that, it is time for buy, sell, or hold. Aaron has the submissions. Todd, you and I have the choice of whether we're going to buy or sell. We've not seen any of these submissions yet. We'll get through as many of these as we can, and then the rest we will do in the overtime. If, however, at any point in time, you decide to out yourself as another yet scourge known as the beta male by hitting hold, then you will need to have your own private milk and cookies event with Lindsey Graham, your own private milk and cookies event, Todd.
Man, that's weak sauce. Considering the news cycle of that, I mean, I'm on,
Are you like, I don't know, what kind of cookies are we talking about?
I know, I'm just nonplussed. This has been, these last 48 hours, you're willing to look a lot of other things in the eye, I don't know. I just expected a different version of artillery from you on that one. I don't know. Maybe you're just being generous. I don't know. Are you unburdened by what has been, Steve?
If they do a VP debate, what are the odds that JP or that JD would drop that at least once? At least minus what? Minus what? Like you couldn't bet it. The odds are like minus 800, minus 1600, that level of likelihood.
High.
Yes. That at some point he will drop that on her. Yes, just to troll her. All right, Aaron, fire away.
All right, we're going to begin with the rooftop bandit, who I believe is not happy with you. This, for those of you listening, is the Pam Beasley from The Office meme where she goes to Michael Scott and shows him two different printings of the same picture and tells him that corporate needs him to find the differences between those two pictures. I'm sure you've seen this meme before.
I've not actually seen this meme.
So this is a biblical worldview on both of these pictures. One is of Steve Deace and one is of Mike Johnson. And of course, the meme is that there's no difference between you and Mike Johnson now.
Oh, my goodness.
I love it. In terms of snark, I'll buy. Sure. I mean, you guys sure you want to sit in this chair?
I
risked 10 years of work building a company, fighting against a pandemic, almost entirely alone with a very small band of people. Okay. And no one else was doing this. But you're in this chair, you're always one rub my belly away from et tu Brute, Now, it doesn't bother me. I grew up with Dave Deace. You guys, like you were just saying, you expected more out of me with the Lindsey Graham hold. I grew up with Dave Deace, man. I've been called worse, called way worse, treated even worse than that. And that was by the dude I called Dad. All right. So you're going to have to come a lot stronger than that to deter me. Okay. But that's that this does beat going down a mine shaft with a flashlight. But yeah, you're always one opinion away from being the next Judas Iscariot. So I'll buy. I think it's snarky though. I like it. I'll buy.
It's amazing. And that was birthed because the deep state just tried to kill the Republican frontrunner for president of the United States. I mean, let's connect the dots. And Steve said, they're trying to kill us now. I'm going to do what I can to fight back against that. And that's your answer? Is go to hell an option in buy, sell, hold?
Come on. Cut him a little bit of slack, don't you think? No?
To the extent,
I mean, hey,
this is not in a vacuum. We're seeing all of this online right now.
I know. 6 months ago, I had people who literally thanked our show for saving their lives during the pandemic. Call me a traitor and everything else for endorsing DeSantis. Okay? I went all the way to the mattresses to the very end with Ron DeSantis. Now, the people that thanked me for doing that, like this memer here, and called me brave for doing that. Okay? And did I not say all the whole time, by the way, that I was going to vote for Trump if he won the nomination? Didn't I say that the entire time? Is it?
You know who else said that?
Is this a secret?
Do you know who else said
Ron
that?
DeSantis also said that. Yes, indeed. So I didn't just change my position on this. I changed my posture, meaning my level of involvement and investment in it. That's changed for sure. But I was always, in light of what happened over the weekend, but I was always going to vote for him, barring something I didn't know that emerged. I said this the entire time. That's not new. So the primary started out with people who, you guys, let's do this for a second, because we got overtime. We can always put many of these in the overtime. You guys want to know why many of my colleagues won't do that kind of stuff, let you know what they think about primaries? I'll tell you. Because they're smarter than me. That's why. Because here's what it gets you. I went from being told by a legion of MAGA people I was a literal hero for 3 years and saved their life. Literally. I mean, that's literally what I was told. To I'm now a traitor and a sellout because I endorsed Ron DeSantis over what I perceived to be his superior record during the pandemic that you thanked me for saving you from. That happened. We were talking about that at the time, right? Okay. Then the people that called me a hero because I did endorse DeSantis and went against the grain on that, the people that called me a hero for that, I am now a sellout, grifter, the white Candace Owens, okay? That's what I am now, from the exact same people. Okay? Even though I have the same position on Donald Trump that Ron DeSantis did, their hero, and I didn't even speak at the convention and get invited to, let alone put in prime time, urging us to send Donald Trump back to the White House for 4 more years, like Ron DeSantis did last night. Okay? And oh, by the way, some of those MAGA people who thought I was a traitor and a betrayer after according to them, saving their lives, are now back on board. And like, glad to have you back. Glad to see you back, in the fight. Okay. If you want to know, do you guys really want to know why most of people that make a lot more money than I do in this business don't do the stuff I do? They're smarter than me. Because it's not fun tolerating like any of that, having to navigate that every day. I don't know what's worse. People that just want to give themselves over to idolatry, or have turned not giving themselves over to idolatry into idolatry. All right? Yes is the answer. But, I'm just that dumb because I'm just that stubborn. I'm used to being the new kid in school. All right? I'm used to hiding in the basement, staying away from the parents and all that dysfunction. I'm used to being on my own. So it doesn't, it still bothers me, but I'm used to pushing through all of that kind of stuff. But that's why. There's not that many people that are sellouts in this business. I keep telling you that. Did I say there were no sellouts in this business? No. But there's not this idea, because that's the other thing now, too, that anytime someone gives an opinion I disagree with, grifter or sellout, to the point the term just doesn't even mean anything anymore. All right. The reality is it's just they don't want to tolerate. They're smart enough not to tolerate BS like I have been tolerating for the last year by telling you what I really think. Most of you can't handle it. Yeah, you just can't. It's not to forget it's not good for your business model. Man, it's not good for your emotional health to navigate this kind of stuff all the time with the people you're trying to help. Thank God I'm married to a therapist. And during 75 hard, we're taking long walks every night where I just basically sit on her proverbial couch. Okay, but this is why you guys can't handle it. You lose your minds. Yes. Okay, affirm me has to be a constant decision, and the other people that's why they're making more money than me. They're smarter, and they're like, that's not going anywhere. Okay, so I'm just going to stay above the thing and talking about what people are generally in agreement with, and they're right. Okay, but this is why.
Yeah, and my reach for the go to hell option, here's where it comes from. 1/2 hour after Ron DeSantis gave his speech yesterday supporting Donald Trump, so this happened after that happened, a guy told me I was dishonoring my support for Ron DeSantis by supporting Donald Trump. What the hell do you do with that?
I can tell you right now, as someone who knows Ron DeSantis, dude is not a slurper, but he's not down with any of that either, by the way. That's just not how he rolls. I mean, I can promise you the last thing Ron DeSantis, to his detriment, by the way, politically, the last thing Ron DeSantis wants is a cult of personality around Ron DeSantis. I mean, that's the last thing he wants. I can promise you that. He has no interest in that.
I want to bring this up as well. I was taught one of the most profound things that I think, and important things that I was taught in one of my broadcasting classes in school, was that in typical broadcasting, again, what is the definition of broadcasting? It's an allusion to casting seeds. You're casting seeds broadly, okay? Narrow casting is where you're, casting seeds in a very, very narrow row. Broadcasting is a broad casting, okay, of seeds. That's the allusion that it's made to. In typical broadcasting, it's like a solar system. And the broadcasting is orbiting around the sun, and the sun is the audience. What we are called to do as Christians, believers in broadcasting, is we are in that solar system, but the sun is the SON. Sometimes we're going to intersect. Sometimes the eclipse is going to intersect with different factions that we align with at a different time based on but we're doing our best imperfectly to, in this solar system, orbit around the SON, sun. And sometimes that takes us to strange places. And it's heartbreaking sometimes too, as I just alluded to, when you get the reactions that we've just talked about.
Very well said. Let's do this. I'm going to talk about Hillsdale College as a palate cleanser, and then we're going to reboot and try to get through as many of these buy-sell hold submissions in the next 15 minutes as we possibly can. Fair? All right. Because
under 2.
Because thankfully there is one university, well, there's more, but they're kind of the leader of the remnant, and it is a remnant, that still is trying to provide an education that preserves the blessings of liberty here in America for another generation. And at the vanguard there, our friends at Hillsdale, for 4th of July month, for Liberty Month, they have an educational, inspiring video that you can see and watch for free, and also receive a free commemorative copy of the Declaration of Independence as well if you go to daceforhillsdale.com. That's FOR, daceforhillsdale.com. And in this video, you'll get a chance to see what made the Declaration of Independence so celebrated, with this inspiring portrayal of Thomas Jefferson as he reflects on its meaning in a letter that he wrote later in his life. So you don't want to miss this. All right, especially great educational for your kids as well. daceforhillsdale.com is where you want to go. FOR, daceforhillsdale.com, daceforhillsdale.com.
All right, another palate cleanser here. We will begin or re-begin with Art Ham, who says by the end of the year, the Secret Service will be recruiting people with uneven leg lengths that will specialize in standing on roofs with slopes.
Bye.
I cannot.
My favorite thing, like my whole feed this morning is flooded with this picture of a cow on a sloped roof.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
I mean, that's so snotty. Bye. I mean, what do you say to that? That's more evidence of American decline. Okay. 60 years ago, grassy knoll sounds cool, right? Like if you're going to conspire to assassinate a president, okay, grassy knoll sounds like sinister, like that sounds like it's an allegory, euphemism for the level of drastic of the operation that you're about to undergo. Grassy knoll. We're behind the grassy knoll. You know, you could do like Operation Grassy Knoll. You know what I'm saying? 60 years later now, when they want to assassinate the president, well, the roof was sloped.
Oh, we forgot to bring this up as well. So
even our assassins suck. Even the quote unquote deep state is in decline. That's how systemic the American decline is. We've gone from grassy knoll to slopey roofs. Okay, everything's in decline, even the deep state.
Yeah, we forgot this as well. I should have brought this up in the montage. We were being told yesterday that Trump's Secret Service detail had actually been increased and beefed up because of an alleged plot from Iran to off him.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the obfuscation you're looking for, guys. You're telling me that this numbnuts 20-year-old was able to get around a beefed-up Secret Service detail? Now, on the other hand, is there anybody of import that the Iranian Ayatollah doesn't have the fatwa out on? I don't think so, but still.
And like Newt Gingrich said, and he's right, they're counting on being able to get away with it again because they always do.
Yep.
And there's all kinds. If you're looking at what a lot of Americans are getting titillated right now in popular culture, and will continue in the next coming months, that's a good money bet. By the way, there's all kinds of people. It doesn't matter if the bullets are flying; they don't care. They're baiting.
By the way, quick breaking news: the Democrat Civil War is apparently still on. Mm-hmm. Adam Schiff just came out and called for Biden to drop out of the race. Charles Schumer. NBC News reports Charles Schumer tried to get the Democratic National Convention delayed. Okay, so that's breaking news that's just come out here in like the last 15 minutes. Aaron, go ahead.
We continue with Weston Kamathi, who says the best example of sports bro culture is a significant amount of grown men organizing and protesting the pending move of the Oakland Athletics baseball team, rather than organizing and protesting to oust their awful city leadership.
I mean, that's a sonnet. That's a homily. Bye.
It's one of countless examples, and this is exactly at the heart of what ails us. Exactly.
Yep.
Integritas RX says postmillennialism will be the dominant eschatological viewpoint among Gen Z within the next 10 years.
If you're specing this Gen Z, this I could see. I think that this is possible. Now, I also think it's possible it could be for the wrong reasons, meaning that they have not necessarily seriously navigated the eschatological waters and traditions as much as they're looking for something to separate themselves from Israel. See what I'm saying? Okay. Similar to a lot of people called themselves libertarians a decade ago, just so they wouldn't have to take a position on gay marriage anymore, you know? So it could be for some of the wrong reasons, but I think this trend line is accurate. I'll buy.
It seems accurate to me, but I think it's not going to be quite as simple, because if there's this thing going around between Tucker Carlson and this John Rich guy.
Yeah, we need to discuss this. It's some of the stuff I've mentioned before about where dispensationalism came from in the Schofield Bible, that clip.
Like,
yeah.
I think if there's like a definitive debunking and moving away from one of the dominant Protestant evangelical themes of the last 150 to 200 years, I think it's not going to be just as simple as we move over to that side of the thing. I think it's going to raise all kinds of questions.
Potentially. Yep.
Jeffrey Preston Bezos Stan account, Mount Rushmore of classic rock song intros: Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones, Sweet Emotion by Aerosmith, Time by Pink Floyd, and Roundabout by Yes.
So we're just talking the emotions, or the intros.
Yeah. Sweet Emotion, that's a good one. Gimme Shelter.
The intro to Time on Dark Side of the Moon, is incredible. But I'm going to sell. I don't think your list is bad. I think you're missing arguably the greatest rock and roll song intro of all time. Okay, I mean, and that's For Those About to Rock by AC/DC.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the way that kind of begins and cranks up. Okay, and gets into the bass. Doom, 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 doom. I mean, I turned that into my intro on my show for many, many years. That is absolutely on any Mount Rushmore of greatest rock song intros. Has to be. Well, okay.
There was no way you were going to put together this list and not have somebody quibble with it. So I'm just going to buy in the fact that you had an all-timer for me. Gimme Shelter is...
That's good. I agree.
It had to be on any list, and you put it on there. It is a phenomenal. It's my favorite Stones song.
Another one, by the way, "Wake Up" by Rage Against the Machine is also one of the greatest rock song intros of all time.
Kashmir.
That's the theme to The Matrix, for people wondering what that is.
Kashmir, Led Zeppelin.
That's another one. Yeah. I mean, Led Zeppelin basically has a song catalog of greatest rock song intros. Yes.
You gave me one song that I was feeling, so that had to be good enough, because we were going to argue no matter what this list was.
Sure. Yeah.
Here's a political assessment. Excuse me, you might have to read this one, Steve.
All right, Aaron Reale says, Todd, the Trump shooting is the hunter's laptop of 2024. The difference is the timing. The laptop happened after early voting started, rendering voter mind change less effective, while this happening now will actually have a major effect, especially if Trump runs with the images. I think this is actually very good analysis. I'll buy. I think it doesn't mean it will come true, okay? But I think his analysis is sound, that it has that kind of potential. I'll buy.
Aaron's a smart guy. I see what he's doing, but I'm still going to sell. I think that we are comparing apples and oranges events.
All right, next we go to Timothy Stevens. Leftists are grasping at absurd explanations for the assassin's motive because their worldview won't allow them to consider that they might be the bad guys. Their inherent goodness and our inherent evil are fixed realities in their world, and the narrative for every event is simply molded to fit these beliefs.
Correct. Yeah. Which is you just itemized and exegeted why I have no problem with what Libs of TikTok is doing to individuals. And I applaud what Robbie Starbuck is doing to corporations, because understand what this means. If it's okay for Tenacious D to get up there on stage and say, "I wish they wouldn't have missed," and people cheered, that's a proxy for you, okay? And if it's permeated at that level in the water table, it has to be rooted out, or we will start shooting each other. You cannot peaceably live alongside of that. I promise you can't.
There was this great post this morning. I wish I could remember. I didn't recognize the account, but it regaled me. Do you remember in the middle of the Trump administration where the OK symbol was a symbol of white supremacy?
Yes.
Do you remember when the electrician cracking his knuckles outside of his truck door got fired, or at least came under fire?
They went after Army cadets over that,
For
if
the
I
love
remember,
of God.
and everything else.
Yep. It's so hopelessly naive not to. We don't want it to go on indefinitely. But my goodness, think of this is in the Avengers. We want them to be our friends again. But when Hawkeye in that first one was under Loki's spell, it took a hard shot to the dome to wake him up, okay? We got to squeeze for a while. There's no other way around this, folks. Take off your stupid pleated khakis.
Preach.
James Miller says Elon Musk is getting more conservative by the day. His latest decision, moving SpaceX headquarters to Starbase, Texas from California due to the passage of the anti-parental rights law in California, is just the latest example.
This is either the most high-profile red pill of all time, or he's the Antichrist. Okay? So it's one of the two. All right? It's one of the two. Meaning that this is the greatest co-opting of all time.
Didn't he come out right after the attempted assassination and endorse Trump?
Pretty much. And I've seen that he's going to give, $45 million a month?
A month.
But he wants it earmarked toward ground campaign, not to legal fees, is what I also read.
And this is
which is
everybody
smart.
Who's struggling with this. A lot of different people. Elon Musk is not the Steve Deace Show. We're all saying we're not going to let you kill us.
Yes.
That's what we're saying.
It's just really, Before we get to have the nuanced conversations about where we're going in the future, we have
to get to the future.
A future. You don't have a future if your kid's kindergarten teacher and the clerk at your Home Depot thinks it's okay to shoot in the head your leaders. because that's a proxy for saying they think it's okay to shoot you in the head. We don't have a future, guys. Very limited. Pardon the pun, very limited in scope, okay? Very limited in scope future, if that's okay, okay? Very limited.
Along those lines, Beers and Baseball says DeSantis as future GOP presidential candidate is in serious doubt, doomed if Trump-Vance wins because of Vance being the MAGA heir apparent.
I think it's way too early to bring this kind of stuff up. I mean, if we were in a conventional era, and we could return to that in the next few years, we don't know, but you would be probably correct that if Vance, if the Trump second term is successful and Vance doesn't, do something scandalously beyond dumb, which the parameters for that these days are different than previous eras, he'd be an overwhelming favorite for the nomination in 28. Again, I hope that I hope we are afforded the luxury of discussing those nuances again in the future. Right now, we're not. But we almost didn't have a Republican nominee, and the Democrats don't want their nominee, and that's happening right now, let alone trying to game theory what's going to happen in 4 years.
Do you remember a month ago and how much was different? And it says when everybody's political prognostications, and we've had as much
including our own,
as much fun on this show historically, but if you're slow your roll on all of it, all right? Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves, but thinking to 2028 now, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. We honestly,
we came within an inch of not having a 2024.
Yes. Think of
potentially
a month ago. Think of the last 4. Think of what Trump almost getting assassinated. That first day of the Republican convention of what we were talking about. You really want to micromanage what 2028 is going to look like, folks? We have so much crap to take care of before then.
Quickly, I think this is a good idea, so I'm buying. Country Squire says the Steve Deace Show should release the Theology Thursday study of Romans as standalone videos on YouTube. I like this idea. I think we should do it after its completion and do a little bit of extra production. I know this is extra work, but I think just release it as a playlist on YouTube.
If you're willing to do that, I buy, because I will tell you, I've only gotten 7,000 emails suggesting something like this.
If it continues to live up to the standard I think we've set so far, I'm in.
Okay. I mean, if Aaron's willing to do the work.
I don't know. No, that's going to be in like 2036.
Yes.
If we make it that far.
Notice that Aaron said when we finish this.
That's why I don't feel
anticipating
bad.
We may never finish it.
I'll commit to it because it'll probably never get done.
Daniel Horowitz is next. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, here on BlazeTV radio and podcast, also live right now on X, so hopefully you're tuned in there, brought to you by our friends over at realestateagentsitrust.com. You know, there are those who lead and those who follow, and you want to make sure you are following the right leader if you're going into the Joe Biden Let's Go Brandon real estate market. On our walk last night, we saw something we've not seen a lot in our neighborhood in the last couple of years. And when we moved into this neighborhood 18 years ago, for about a decade, man, if a house other than the dead of winter in this neighborhood stayed available on the market for more than a month, we knew something was wrong with it. Now, there's been, barely any homes for sale. We walked by a house last night, had a for sale sign in its yard, and Amy and I were like, thoughts and prayers. Okay. I mean, that's where we are, and that's why you want to make sure you go in with a real estate agent you can trust. And where would you find one of those? The name says it all. Head to realestateagentsitrust.com. We'll hook you up with an agent whose track record of success has been fully vetted and verified. And that way you can rest assured. And a lot of times, by the way, they come from this audience. So you have similar values there too. And that way you can rest assured, whether you want to get across town or you need to get across the country, you get the outcome you want with an agent you can trust at realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. Let's bring in our good friend, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation himself, Daniel Horowitz. And Daniel, if you don't mind, I'm probably blindsiding you a little bit here, but there is breaking political news, and that we've not yet had a chance. We've mentioned it, but have not had a chance to analyze it. So I want to get your take. Adam Schiff has become the most high-profile member of Congress to come out now and call for Joe Biden to step aside. NBC News is reporting that Charles Schumer tried the Senate Majority Leader, tried to get the Democratic National Convention delayed. You know, one of the things I had no idea was going to happen after the near assassination of Trump, I didn't know what they would do. I didn't know if they would just say, screw it, we're going to take the L anyway and blame it all on Dementia Joe, or if this would accelerate their efforts all the more. It appears they're going down the latter road, that they're not giving up the ghost here of getting him off the ballot. But what's your read of this after reports this morning that Biden had a call with congressional leaders where he got very angry with them? That was all over the news when I was at the gym this morning. So you're the skate to where the puck is going, guys. So where's the puck going, brother?
Well, I've been skating there for a long time. I'm not blindsided. I mean, as you well know, Steve, I've been warning about this forever. You've said this many times. They are not like us. They don't think like us. They don't act like us. They do. They don't just go into an election thinking that, 90% you're going to lose and not do anything about it. You look at the GOP's convention and the unity and the success of it, in terms of the way they think at least. And there's no way the Democrats are going to go into convention with Harris and Biden nominating speeches and people like, and this is why we need to reelect Joe. Like, it's just not going to happen. Okay. And it never was. And this is a little frustrating for me because this is why I have been saying since the 2022 elections, I was like, look, there's something fundamentally wrong here. Where the Democrats seem to have a very high floor of support. They seem to be winning all the elections despite everything going on. And the response from the entire industry, the Republican Party, the industry is Biden poops in pants. Biden poops in pants. I'm like, look, you got to make some plays. You got to pick budget fights. You got to accentuate the border issue with the government shutdown fight. I'm pushing all this stuff.
Let's discuss really quick why you're giving that analysis so people understand. It's because if we make the entirety of the election about that Biden poops his pants, if they get rid of Biden, then what's our next narrative? We need to set an issue that it's their agenda that's bad and they're pooping their pants every day on issues, not just him literally in his Depends. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. And this is putting aside, this is whomever would be the GOP nominee. This is whatever misgivings we have with, a party that's both simultaneously like union socialism, but then we're going to appoint Jamie Dimon as the Treasury Secretary and the log cabin Republicans. I'm not even getting into that. I'm just saying from a pure R versus D that the R's need to win at all costs. What always bothered me was, and it was on display in the convention for the most part, it's all making fun out of a dead horse. So what will happen if they swap him out? Now, I'm not saying it's game over. Democrats automatically win. But the point is Republicans have been literally measuring the drapes, talking about what they're going to do. They're going to win all 57 states. And if you look carefully, they still don't have a campaign on the ground that matches the Democrats. Hopefully, Elon Musk's money will help change that. But the point is that if you put it all into Biden, I kept saying the last 3 weeks, even if you didn't believe in my thesis, at this point, any focus on making fun out of Biden and his polling, ironically, is just giving into their narrative. You look at the polling right now, Steve. Still, most polls have the Democrats running the table with the Senate elections. That's a red flag. That should really concern people, and there's several.
Explain why. Is that because it indicates that we have not correctly made the case against their agenda, and so that this is largely just a unique rejection of Joe Biden? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
That is, everyone has noticed that Democrats came out with. Politico had this hypothetical poll where a bunch of hypothetical Dems were running 5 points ahead of Biden, more in line with like Bob Casey, the senator from Pennsylvania. Obviously, again, there's still a mix. Some polls have Trump up 3 to 5 to 6 nationally. Some only have him up 1. Couple outliers have Biden up 1. Remember, the polling seemed to recently understate Democrat support. Not saying it's going to happen again. But the point is that there's 3 things at play here. Number 1, there's just longstanding demographics and education. Democrats could literally get up there, buck naked on stage and do the hula hula, they'll get 48%.
Yeah, they have a floor that we've allowed them to subsidize with our government.
We have allowed them to subsidize. Yeah. And we all say that, all the like nationalists and the immigration and demographics. Well, I actually believe in that. So, yeah, I mean, and that's whomever Republicans would nominate would have to face that. You're not going to win. what we're looking at the last 3 weeks is the worst news cycle you could ever have for a party running for re-election. And again, even the worst polling, it's not what you would expect it to be, even for Joe Biden. So you swap him out, you get back to this question as to why did Democrats keep winning? Again, it's the demographics, it's the education, it's Trump is not well liked. I mean, that's just a reality. I don't see his favorables recovering in at least the polling data. It's more that just Biden, people just don't want him. And then there's a lack of competent ground game. There's a lack of a message. And my whole point was this, and I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I'm glad you brought this up, Steve. Ted Cruz gave a terrific speech last night. Every damn time. And he went through all of the women that have been murdered and raped by illegals. And I always said to myself, if you believe this is your winning issue, which both sides pundits believe is the ace in the hole, why wouldn't you harness national attention and say September 30th precisely as you're starting early voting? Not like, oh, we got to avoid that. It's like, Steve, I have a knockout punch, but I don't want to throw it right at the critical time. Like, no, that's when you want. Well, why is the government shut down? Because these SOBs want to fund gangbangers, rapists, people invading the country, endangering your daughters, your wives. Ted Cruz's speech needs to be put into action for a budget fight. I never understood the run out the clock strategy. I never understood it. And I think, like, I'm not saying for sure it's going to happen, but you have to be prepared that they swap him out, not just for Harris, but a totally fresh face, like a governor who's not in the Senate, that you can't easily tie to the morass of the melees of the last 4 years. Obviously doesn't have the personal baggage of Biden. Now what?
Moving forward to where the puck is going, let's talk about JD Vance for a second. It was fascinating yesterday because, I mean, I don't know him at all, never met him. I've followed him a little bit from afar. He wasn't going to be in a position of Senate leadership, so he really hasn't been a focus of my daily coverage, and I don't live in Ohio. So a lot of it is what I've heard third hand. I did not like what he said about the abortion drug a week ago, but there was this collage of clips that liberal media put out yesterday, and I'm like, I don't know, man. This is frankly one of the best montages from a Republican politician I've ever seen. Actually, could host this show. A lot of this could host this show. You're actually. I guess I'm sold. I guess. What I think is interesting, though, and you're, as a Jew, you're uniquely qualified to answer this. Is I spoke to a friend of mine on Friday, very loyal Republican, Messianic Jew, very, very pro-Israel. And I asked him, what he thought about what was going on over there right now, and and we got into the VP choice, and he was adamantly like, if it's JD Vance, I think Israel is screwed. Well, you, Josh, Dave Reboy, you guys are all. For you to say this is the best Trump can do is the closest you're capable of probably coming to an endorsement. Dave Reboy at Claremont has sent me about 30 texts with various examples of his love for JD Vance. Our co-buddy Josh Hammer has done the same thing. He's been all over social media how much he loves him. So can you bridge this for us? Because that is paramount right now, regardless of what your position on Israel is. There's a war happening over there right now, and there are a lot of signs that it's going to spill over into the north to wider to Hezbollah and everything else. So what's your read of his appointment as the running mate? Because if this is a successful administration, we will be dealing with J.D. Vance on some level for the foreseeable future. So what do you think?
So, there's a lot to say there. We don't have enough time to cover everything, but I want to hone in on your point of Israel in particular, maybe foreign policy in general. So first, it's important to understand there's two aspects to JD, who he is as a person and what he is as Trump's second in command. I've always had a very pessimistic view of the influence of a VP, both in terms of getting elected and in terms of governing. It's more relevant, like you said, later on if he's, elevated as the heir apparent for when he would be the number one guy. So I don't have a lot of hope in him moving Trump to the right, absent us building a movement like those 110 organizations. building a movement around JD to hold Trump accountable. JD alone won't do that, as witnessed by the abortion comments, where JD personally is a strong social conservative, but I think there's even news he scrubbed.
That was an area that he needed to conform, is what you're saying, to the ticket.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he will conform. Look, okay, so that's in terms of his utility to the Trump candidacy. In terms of JD personally, here's what does matter. JD actually, to the extent you want to ascribe an intellectual mooring to Trump's rise, rather than just kicking over a bucket and having postmodern art on a piece of paper, it's JD Vance. Okay, JD is kind of what people ascribe to Trump, but it's really not there. Not 100% where you and I are. I think there's some fiscal economic issues. He's still trying to figure himself out. This false dichotomy of, are you a shill for corporations, or are you just kind of a populist as an end to itself rather than a free market populist? There's a lot to say there. I did a whole show, July 16th, Tuesday's show. If you guys want to look it up, I spend an hour on this. So there's some concerns there. But in general, on net, this is the best that this sort of era has to produce, where I think he legitimately intellectually has thought deeply about things, and he legitimately does believe, if you want to break it up into the three spheres, fiscal, social, and national defense, on the social and national defense, I think he's good. And to focus on national defense, the problem we have had is that there's this false dichotomy. Either you're a Nikki Haley, Mike Johnson, Wilsonian, okay, where we need to worry about everything but America, or there's a lot of people who have the proper critique of that, but then we have reactionaryism, where people just can't find themselves. We have that on fiscal issues too, by the way, just overcorrecting. So now we're not realists or Jacksonians, America first, but we're pacifists. We're Gaza civilians, yay. We're like, let the Houthis attack us. We're like, damn Trump for killing Qasem Soleimani. Pacifism, code pink, just weakness. JD is the first person of high profile to move on from the Nikki Haley, Mike Johnson worldview and do it very resolutely, but stick the landing in the right balance. He's very strong against Iran, not in a neocon way, very pro-Israel, again, not in indulgence, but let them do what they need to do. And we do what we need to do. And, strong national defense, strong Jacksonian view of projecting power in our own hemisphere, a new Monroe Doctrine, but just stay the heck out of these Wilsonian sort of ethnic conflicts, Islamic, sectarian conflicts. And you see he's thought very deeply about that. There's a lot to say.
1 minute. Go ahead. I got 1 minute.
Private texts we've seen. So this is, I think, what we need. And for pro-Israel people, this is the best thing, because if you're left with the Mike Johnson worldview, it's just going to turn more people off because he does it in the wrong way with the wrong focus. And because he supports Ukraine, he supports, Iraq intervention.
And you get linked in with all of that. And
you get
yes.
lumped in.
Yeah.
This from an intellectual standpoint of affirmatively, where do we need to stand on foreign policy? I think it was the best pick he could have chosen.
What I hear you saying, 20 seconds, is basically JD Vance is the intellect, represents the intellectual wing of the disruption that Trump's persona largely produces on its own. Is that kind of what I hear you saying in a way?
Exactly. And with fiscal issues, I could see him appointing a labor union boss. I can't see JD, if he were president, appointing Jamie Dimon.
Or Wilbur, what's his nuts? That was who was talking about that soup.
Ross.
Wasn't that? Yeah, Wilbur Ross. Thank you. Yeah, that was a disaster.
And Jerome Powell. He's keeping Jerome Powell too. So
good stuff. Thank you, Daniel.
Take care.
You bet. Let me remind you one more time, folks, about our friends at Jace Medical. Especially, I brought them up earlier in the show when it comes to making sure you've got backups of venerable medications. Make sure your loved ones do. I mean, if you've got a loved one right now, an elderly loved one who's on Medicaid, Medicare, They're a ward of the state, man. Their healthcare is at the complete control of this government right now. And so give them the peace of mind that maybe the medications they need, they have backups as well, because you can customize your Jace case, and they have a wide menu now of medications, especially in light of all the drug shortages we're seeing today. All right. So head over to jacemedical.com, JASE, jacemedical.com. Get that peace of mind for you and especially your elderly loved one right now at jacemedical.com. Use the discount code DACE at your checkout to get a discount on your order. All right, code DACE at Jace Medical, JASE, jacemedical.com. Anybody got a 40-second take on what Daniel and I just discussed?
Well, I mean, Bernie Sanders just this morning, actually just within the last 2 minutes, I saw via the New Yorker that he wants Joe Biden to stay in the race. Now, he's not an Adam Schiff. He's not necessarily in the upper echelons of power brokers, but he certainly is a spiritual leader on that side of the aisle.
Vance is capable of governing, unlike Mike Pence. Mike Pence was more about posturing for that initial win in the election, and then the entire cabinet that followed was gutless and incapable. I think Vance is a sign of what hopefully will come and must come. Personnel is policy. Your cabinet must meet that reality that Vance meets.
All right, we're going to stick around and do overtime for subscribers at blazetv.com/Dace, where we will get through the rest of your buy, sell, or hold submissions. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.